because many of us move throughout our jobs or our life very unaware at a conscious level of the ways in which we are perpetuating our own oppression, our way through healing. We can't attend enough workshops to heal.
I think the reality of that illusion of protection being gone is allowing us to see things, feel things, and get to the point where we're like, hey, shh.
Dirty pain is the avoidance. That's what causes disharmony on a physical and spiritual level, right? Clean pain is recognizing that when we metabolize the pain, we allow the body to process it and release it. And in order to release it and process it, you have to feel it. Like, we're at a time where we can choose to continue to be asleep, or we can recognize maybe the short-term pain that it'll take for us to remember and to tap in and to metabolize and to actually feel, but with an understanding that that is what is going to liberate us.
Mm.
Or we can avoid the pain now, only to understand that it doesn't go away. Our bodies hold on to it and we pass it to the next generation. So I think you're onto something with part of our role, I think, of healers in this time is to hold people through that, to be that container, to create that container for people to remember in a way that reminds them of their divinity, in a way that is loving, in a way that, like, I think us healers have an opportunity to sit in the liminal space with the collective in ways that we haven't felt or experienced before on a collective level. And maybe that's what I mean when I say peace. Like, I have a level of peace, but it's not the toxic peace. It's not this, but it's very much recognizing that there is going to be pain and there is going to be discomfort, and that I'm not necessarily going to experience the fruits of all my labor in this lifetime. But I have a deep knowing that this is part of my soul's journey and my soul's mission. And even if I'm not to experience it all in this lifetime, I know that this is, like, the fruit is going to continue, right? Like, I get peace and I heal myself and my lineage through that understanding. And that was hard. Like, that was hard to come to, and realization too, that, like, it might mean it's not all roses and happiness. And it might mean that, I don't get to actually experience this vision I have for the new earth in this body, in this vessel. And that's why I think spirituality is so important, because when we understand the journey of the soul, we can expand our understanding of life beyond this lifetime, if that makes sense.
Yes. And you already know it makes a ton of sense to me. As we're talking through this, it's something that I've said a few things about, like, randomly, but I have kind of been holding on to this piece of the conversation, because when we think about how things are showing up and how we are in this space and time of almost like needing to break through and have liberation, do you feel like there's specific generations that are leading this? Do you feel like there's specific generations right now that are physical on this earth that are sitting back a bit more, or maybe are more of the problem? I don't know. Like, I don't even know how to ask it, but I think there's this reality of there's some clear generational differences. And my perspective, this has happened. This has been my perspective as long as I can remember. It's like, I genuinely feel like the generation above us failed us woefully. And I think there is a level of privilege that they truly enjoyed. And because of that veil, there's a lot of work they didn't do. And it dumped way too much on us. And I think it's dumping too much on the generations after us too, which is a big reason why I think some of the challenges we're facing, whether you want to call it physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, define it how you see fit. It's so what almost feels like dramatic, but it truly is such a drastic and, like, in your face experience, because of how the generations above us have not dealt with so much that it leaves it to us, and we're almost like the ultimatums.
Yeah.
So I know I kind of talked a little bit more than I wanted to here, but I would just love your perspective on this. And even if it's like something you either don't think too much of, or
Yeah.
feel differently of, please. I would love to have a conversation about this.
I'm like taking notes because to be honest, I haven't really thought of it that way. But I wonder, so let's go with this because I think you're onto something here. Like if you think about our parents, they lived in the time of some of the civil rights leaders, right? So I think that there was almost this illusion of we've made it.
Mm.
And I mean, even when you look at the people who showed up for Barack Obama, it was again, and this is the ways in which white supremacy continues to work, right? Because we believed, we as in the generation before us, believed we've made it, right? There's a black man who's president of the United States, we've made it.
Yeah.
And there was almost like this refusal to hold on to the oppressed mindset. But I don't mean it as like a victim mentality. I just mean as it like, I'm not going to be defined by my race. I'm going to be defined by how hard I work. And I'm going to be defined by like, I made it to the boardroom. So, you know, like if I make it to the boardroom, then I can make it so that others can come and have a seat at the table. And it's interesting that like now that I'm thinking about this, that was very much a mentality of when before I left corporate, I called and had conversations with many Black and people of color leaders in the industry to ask them what they thought because I wanted to get a feel for, is my work going to be like, could I actually do this work? And the denial and the dismissal of these Black leaders in corporate was really uncomfortable for me. And at the time, I'm like, I really thought, I was like, am I just making a bigger deal out of it than it really is? Like, how do they not see? Like, how are they in, you know, how do they not even see this as like important? It was just weird. So I think you're onto something of like, I think there was a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they signed up to this false belief that it's behind us. And I wonder, because I even think about my parents. So I was raised by a white mom and a Black dad, and they never talked about race. So then when I started waking up and on my own journey, I held on to a lot of resentment and anger. Like, why didn't you talk about this? And from my dad's perspective as a Black man, he wanted me to feel like anything was possible. So in his mind, he wasn't going to plant the seed that I was different, which is so interesting because it was like he had to practice the illusion. He saw that as a way to protect. He wasn't doing it, you know, because he thought we were beyond it necessarily. He was doing that as a form of protection. And he truly believed that that was protecting me. So it's like we've kind of that, I wonder if that generation has kind of subscribed to post-racial ideology as a form of survival.
Sis, I feel very much aligned with that there. I feel like the generation before our parents, there's definitely a survival behavior that they had to incorporate and they learned and they taught too of we have to shut up, quiet. Now at the same time, with that same learned and survival behavior, they understood where their energy needed to go and how they needed to fight and survive to the next step, to be able to allow their children to eat, to be able to allow their children to experience things that in their lifetime they probably only got towards the end or never even saw. So you had those civil rights leaders and people that we're talking about, they're not from our parents' generation, they're before. Those were their parents and grandparents. That was them. They really fought to be able to give them the pie to eat, to give them the space to go to college, do this freely, or a lot more freely than they did. Let's, for comparison, comparing those generations. Now, I think there's this reality in my head and in my own life, I think yours too, where they enjoyed the slice of pie that they were shared.
Yeah.
And in enjoying that slice of pie they were shared, they did not build that new pie for us. They had the veil and they had the pie they were eating. In a lot of ways, though don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fight and struggle they had to go through. But a lot of that was to be able to have an illusion of having the pie.
Yes.
They wanted the luxury. They wanted this. They wanted that. And the generation before fought and gave it to them. So when they were able to be that token or that whatever you want to call it, I don't think they really thought about the next generation. Maybe they thought about, in some ways, making sure we had an education, but the generation before them thought about way more than just having an education. They understood to have that education, you
Yeah.
need to have the community, you need to have the food, you need to have the resources, you need to think 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years in advance. And I don't think the generation before us thought that same way. So they're over here eating up, having the luxuries that their parents fought for. They're enjoying that small piece of pie that was really, really, for hundreds of years, worked on without putting the work to make sure that for hundreds of years after, that pie grows and it becomes
Yeah.
bigger and we're able to continue to distribute more and more. They took that and they became selfish. It's like, I made it. Then it became this true elitism amongst the Black community where it's like only one or two are here and they look down on us just similar to the same exact structures we have seen from the white people, from other people before. And that we became our biggest problem. We
Yeah.
became integrated and slapped ourselves in the face, got lazy,
I
forgot.
Yes, forgot. And that's like, and I think that you're totally onto something. And I think it kind of goes to this understanding of like, we or the generation before us ate the pie and drank the Kool-Aid, right? So it's like they didn't have, because I'm just trying to think, I don't know history exact, but like this was kind of the rise of the Black church, right? But the root of the Black church is white man Christianity. It's toxic patriarchy. So it was almost like they fooled themselves and they were removed from the deep understanding that's within our bones of community care, of showing up as a good ancestor now, right? And so I'm wondering how much the role of the Black church, rooted in white supremacy, played in this illusion and the separation, right? This dismemberment,
This is
this
huge.
forgetting.
This, and I don't think a lot of us are ready to talk about this here. I don't think a lot of us are ready to talk about it because there's a level we have to admit amongst ourselves that did we just become our oppressors? What did we forget? Oh my gosh, there goes it again. Remembering and forgetting.
And forgetting.
There goes again. Like, what did we forget?
Yeah.
And what could we even now be remembering? Remember, there was the church, and again, my history is only so good. The church was the one way a lot of us were able to have a voice, to speak, to have time away from the slave owners, the slave masters, call it whatever. And the one space we had to be and exist as a community. Now, that space was always multi-purpose. And I think at some point, especially in the rise of the Black church, it stopped being its multi-purpose.
Yeah.
And became that illusion that was pushed on us.
Yeah. I'm here for this conversation. I think this is so important because this is like having this conversation does not absolve the ways in which white supremacy harms the collective and the ways in which those who are privileged in a white supremacist society need to step up and do their own work. This conversation does not absolve, does not get rid of the need for that continued work. But it is interesting to me because the more I have integrated my understanding of the way the universe works, and not just my understanding, but how outside of the context of the church, the more I learned about that, the more that I see all of these predominantly white spaces talking about manifestation and the ability to be able to like manifest our greatest desires. That conversation is missing in the Black community. And actually, when we talk about the Black church, that kind of is seen as devil's worship, which is insane because that is exactly what the white man labeled African spirituality. So when you start talking about we became our own oppressors, there is some truth in that. And again, I'm saying that as we need to have the conversation, and that again does not absolve the work that needs to be done by white America and you know what I mean? But it still should be part of the conversation. And we have to take responsibility. We as the collective people of color have to take some responsibility to have that conversation and that dialogue so that we can actually truly imagine a new way of being.
Absolutely. And I think we didn't know what direction this conversation was going to go, but I think there's this underlying belief that we both have of like, we understand as Black people, we have to live in our power. We have to stand in our power. We have to own our power. And
Yes.
with doing that takes a lot of looking at yourself in the mirror, a lot of looking at our community in the mirror, a lot of accountability and knowing that what would it look like if we became more unified again as a community? What would it look like if we remembered? And we
I
were
have chills.
working for not just today, but we were truly building that legacy for tomorrow. I will say that there are many communities out there that have been very oppressed through history too, that I think we can learn from them in the ways in which they stick together and they build together and they heal together. None of us are perfect, and that's okay. But I think it's time for us to stop trying to look for the white man as our savior. We have to stop doing that. I don't know. Actually, I do know. I know about when this happened in history, but I think there's
Yeah.
that reality of like, we forgot who the we are and
Yeah.
how powerful, how strong we have been for so many generations. We don't need the approval of others to be amazing, to be kind. What continues to stick amongst us is our kind and loving and nurturing nature to help everyone. Now, I wish we would just
Yes.
help ourselves get to the point that we can really build and help ourselves and help others too. Because I really think that we as Black people have the power to build that world that we see
Yes.
where we
We
are
do.
supporting one another, where different communities, different people, different backgrounds can live together and respect one another and honor one another without tearing each other down. It happened before. It can happen again. But we can't look for people outside of us to give us a veil to make it seem okay, because that is not addressing the real emotions. That is not addressing, I forget how we said it, but like, I think we talked a lot about how things physically show up for us. We have
Yeah.
to be okay with it showing up and it being a little reckless as it shows up. But we
Yes.
just can't continue to allow this tumor to grow to the point we can no longer support it.
I love that. That is so beautiful. I think it was Renuko Rashidi. Is that his name? Renuko Rashidi. He was on the shoot something Rock Newman show. He's since passed, I think within the last year or so. But
Mm.
he said one of the worst things you can do to a young Black child is to teach them that their history began with the transatlantic slave trade. And so, like, this is very much connected to reclaiming our power.
Mm.
We were once kings and queens, right? And it's our responsibility to remember that and to teach our children that if and again, we hold the white man accountable for healing the white man's shit and their role in bringing about the new earth. And if we are talking about accountability, then we too have to look in the mirror and we have to understand what we are accountable for.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to go beyond us. You said it.
Yes.
Legacy. We are creating a legacy. We are building legacy. So what does it look like? What does legacy building look like?
Mm-hmm.
And I would love for us to like continue this dialogue because
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes, because oh my gosh, thank you so much. We've been talking for a while, so we'll wrap it up and stuff.
Okay.
Thank you. And I love how we really focused on our community a lot here.
Yeah.
And we're not absolving the white man of any of the stuff, white men, women, all of them, of any of the stuff they're doing because they have to deal with their own stuff. We just have to stop carrying their karma. Like, it's not, let's let them, because their journey, child, we'll let the white people work that out. That's a whole different
Mm-hmm.
story.
Yes. Yes. And actually I would love to talk about that because in my not today, but like another episode, because that has been my journey. And in this season of my life, there are some of us who feel called to hold container for white women to do the work. And we can't do that if we don't love ourselves, if we don't, so
Absolutely. And Bree, I
yeah.
think because you come from a biracial background, it makes a lot of sense for you to have, I don't know if this is the right term, like a seat at the table for this, like really in
Yeah.
advocating, leading, and understanding, because there's a reality if you have aspects to your identity that also tie to their history.
Oh my gosh, yes. So that's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about the role that biracial people have in creating the new earth, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't mean all of us, right? And it has to be a journey. Like we have to commit to going within so that then we can understand what we came here to do. And we decide that for ourselves, not coming from external. Oh my God. So are we right? I'm like making the mental note of what else we need to talk about
Right. And thinking
later.
Thank you so much for your time, for your space, for sharing your wisdom. Just honestly, I think we created a space to have this authentic conversation. And I hope as listeners, like, let us know. We are definitely going to do various conversations in the future. So if there's anything you want to talk to us about, we would love to hear from you. Bria, are there any closing thoughts, remarks that you have?
No, just thank you. Honored
Yeah.
and thankful for sharing this space with you and for your listeners who tune in and just the work and the medicine you're sharing with the world. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thank you all. And as we talked about, all of us, I think we really took a light to us as Black people and the work that we have to do. We also
Yes.
continue to acknowledge and push the accountability to the white communities and other communities for them to do their own healing. That sometimes it's not about remembering or even forgetting, it's about shut up and heal. Take that time, that space that's needed to really dive in, honor your truth, and be okay with whatever may come up. We thank you all for listening. And until next time.